Is your car not cranking over when you try to start it, especially now it's absolutely freezing cold? Hence the hat. Or is things like your lights turn off when you go to start the car, maybe your dashboard lights flicker as you start it, or even you just have a low battery warning on your dashboard? If you have any of those symptoms, there's a good chance that your car's battery needs replacing. And luckily it's a fairly simple procedure, and of course I'm here to help. So let's get into why you should change it, or how you know you need to, physically actually changing it, and on more modern, especially German cars like my 2013 Audi S4, you often need to tell your car or the car's control module that manages the battery that it's been changed, so we'll cover that too. So let's start with how you know you need to replace your battery. There are a couple of very obvious symptoms, like your car not turning over when you turn the key, or things like it not auto-unlocking when you press the button and then not starting. All of those sorts of things, and the symptoms I already mentioned, generally point towards you needing a new battery. Now, there are a couple of things that you should probably rule out first, like the alternator being dead. That's the thing that charges your battery. And if that goes, the battery could still be in a reasonable enough condition, but just have not been charged, and therefore doesn't have enough power to turn it over. If your car does still start, but it's a very slow or weak start, once it's running, use a voltmeter or a multimeter like this. This is super cheap, like £10 on Amazon, and measure the voltage at the battery ideally. If the voltage is around 12 volts, then your alternator is not charging the battery, but if it's more like 14 or 15, then the alternator is good enough for now. There is one slight caveat to that test, if you like, which is that on newer cars like these, and like the F10 5 Series I've done a couple of videos on, what happens is, because the battery is managed by a control module, if the battery itself is effectively dying or dead, the control module will often tell the alternator to not charge the battery, which means that it may look like your alternator is dead, but actually a new battery would solve your problems. And that's where the second piece of relatively inexpensive test equipment comes in, which is one of these. This is a battery tester, and it allows you to test your batteries both in the car and out. All you do is hook up the two clamps, tell it what type of battery you have. In my case, I have an AGM battery, and the battery that was in the car was an 860 amp EN battery with 92 amp hours of capacity. So you tell it that, you press start, and it will tell you the state of charge, what voltage it's at, and how many cranking amps it has available at that specific moment. Now, in my battery's case, it technically reads as good recharge, but the state of charge is incredibly low. I know that my alternator is working fine, and if you look at the cranking amps that are available, that is incredibly low and well below the amount that it should be at, the 860 that it's listed at. So, you know you need to change your battery. Now, how do you go about it? Well, in a lot of cars, it's under the bonnet. Often it's a pretty simple procedure to take it off. There's normally a plastic cover over it, and then there is a battery hold down or tie down that's normally just a couple of bolts. Those come off. You use normally 10mm sockets to remove the terminals, and then you can just lift the battery out, drop a new one in, connect the terminals, and you're kind of good to go. But in larger and fancier cars like this, you'll often find that they're in the boot for better weight distribution, and because they're often massive. In my case, that is where this is. It's under the spare wheel, so we've got to take all of that stuff out to get at the battery. In my specific car's case, you need to remove the spare wheel sort of mounting bracket, which is 4 13mm bolts, and an extra 13mm bolt for the battery tie-down tab. Once you've done that and you've removed the plastic cover off the top, you can then use a 10mm socket to undo the terminals, starting with the negative terminal. Remove that one first, then remove the positive terminal, and you can lift the battery out, making sure to remove the acid vent tube as well. When you drop the new battery in, connect the vent tube up, connect the positive terminal first, then the negative one, and then tighten those down, tighten down all of the associated bracketry, put everything back together, and you're good to go. Now, if you have an older car that doesn't have some sort of battery control module, then that's it. You're done, you don't need to do anything else, go and enjoy your car. But if you do have a battery control module, which you'll often find them in cars like this, basically relatively new German cars, then you will need to tell the computer or that control module that you've replaced the battery. That's often called battery coding and varies from car to car. Of course, I have an Audi S4, and so I'm going to talk about how you can do that in a VAG group car, Volkswagen Audi group, which is basically the same way, although you can look up specific guides for how to do it in BMWs or Mercedes or whatever brand of car you have. Whatever brand of car you have, you will need a coding tool that can write to your car and update the stored values. Most of the cheap sort of OBD2 readers and that kind of thing are just readers. They don't allow you to write. You generally need more expensive tools to be able to do that. You might be able to take it to a local garage if you don't fancy doing that yourself, but if you do plan on working on your car a lot, then the VW tool, which is VCDS, I bought this for, I think it's £220 for this version, which allows you to use it with 3 different cars. This is a really useful thing to have around if you're working in a car, and it lets you do battery coding as well. So you hook it up, you fire up your laptop with VCDS installed, and go to the select modules or select individual modules. Go to, in my case, the module number 19, the CAN gateway, and with my specific car, I'm using the CAN protocol instead of the newer UDS protocol. Now, VCDS or Rostec did a full video on the 3 different options or the 3 different ways you can do battery coding in VAG group cars, so feel free to take a look at that video. I'll link it in the description for you to check out. But suffice to say, I have the middle option, which means that I need a battery with a BEM or BEM code sticker. Now, if you're replacing with a genuine or a direct OE replacement, in this car's case, it would be a Varta battery, would be a good direct replacement. They should have that BEM code sticker on them, and this should be a fairly painless process. All you do is, like I said, go to that CAN Gateway 19, go to, in the drop-down list, the battery replacement option, and then it will give you a string of information that will be made up of the battery's part number, the battery's manufacturer, and the battery serial code. Enter those in, press test, and then save, and as long as the stored value is now been updated, you're all good to go. But if you're replacing your battery with one that is not a genuine or a verified source, if you like, in my case I'm using a Bosch battery, which as far as I'm aware should be manufactured by the same company as Varta, but either way it doesn't come with a BEM sticker and so is a little more complicated. Now, if you're replacing exact like for like, so the same amperage rating and the same capacity, then you can cheat by just modifying your existing sticker or your existing code information by modifying the serial number by 1 digit. And then again, test and save, and that should work fine. But if you're changing the capacity, then it gets a little more complicated. In my case, I'm going from a 92 ampere battery to a 95 ampere battery, which isn't a massive difference and would be fine for me to leave as is. But if you are having a bigger change, so maybe you're going from 92 to say 110, it might be better worth you putting the extra effort to either get a legitimate battery or a BEM code stickered battery, or by finding the part number for a legitimate or BEM code stickered battery of that size and an attributable serial number so that you can enter that instead. In my case, I think I've found the right information for that, so I'm going to be trying that out. But in the grand scheme of things, at least for this model of car, it shouldn't matter too much. You just have to tell it that you've updated or replaced the battery, at least by changing that serial number by 1 digit. So once you've fitted the battery and updated the control module, you're all set. It's highly recommended that you go for a drive to make sure that everything is working as intended. If you have things like battery monitoring in your infotainment system, check that that's working all right as well, and then you're good to go. This is a bit more of a complicated process than I guess I would like, and especially with VCDS, if you have the newer version of the CAN gateway, the UDS protocol version, it's actually way simpler because all you need to do is tell it what the capacity is, and then again, update the serial number, and you're all good to go, as opposed to trying to find the right part number that the car would know, and it's a bit more complicated. But I hope this video has been useful in finding out or telling you how to go about doing that. If it has, feel free to let me know in those comments down below, and of course that like button is there for a reason. If you want to see more videos like this one on a weekly basis, then check out that subscribe button and the bell notification icon. There's also plenty of other videos, including more how-tos and guides like this one, or reviews of things like my 2013 Audi S4 or that F10 5 Series as well. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.